Hey, golfers around the world and maybe even in Arizona. Welcome to the Club Fitting Chronicles. This is going to be a podcast dealing with nothing more than club fitting. You may ask yourself, well, why club fitting? Well, because it doesn't exist out on the internet. And my goal, Josh's goal, that's the two people that are sitting here. Josh, wave, say hello.
Hello.
We're both in this because we want to help golfers play better golf. And I'm going to give you a little bit of my background. Josh is going to give you a little bit of his background. As you can tell, we're about the same age, about 40 years difference.
Roughly, yeah.
But we're gonna talk about why we're doing this, and our goal is to help you. We want to make golf more enjoyable. When I taught at the Golf Academy of America in San Diego, I used to tell my students, the number one goal of golfers is not to be embarrassed. The number two goal is to play well. That's our goal. We want to help you to play well. And if we can keep you from being embarrassed, that's a good thing too. So, my story. First of all, I have been blessed. I have gotten to work with players of all kinds of calibers. And I put together a little list because I was thinking about this. Who have I actually worked with? And I've worked with Champion Tour players. I've worked with PGA Tour players. I've worked with Korn Ferry Tour. Back in the day, the Nike Tour. I've worked with LPGA and Futures. I've worked with the McKinsey Tour players. I've worked with some Japanese PGA Tour players. I've worked with Latin America Tour players, the Sunshine Tour out in South Africa. I have worked with just PGA members and fit them. I have worked with Division I males and female golfers, Division II and Division III. I've worked with high schoolers, getting them to the point where they can get a college scholarship for playing golf. I've worked with kids. I have worked with kids who have made it all the way to the drive, chip, and putt in Augusta, Georgia at the Masters. I've worked with junior world players. I worked actually with one junior world player who won their division, and I got her autograph. She was about 6. I don't know if she's still playing, but I have her autograph somewhere on a golf ball. And I've gotten to work with some really incredible people. You know, I used to be in a storefront in San Diego County in San Marcos, California. ADS Golf, it's still there. Scott Cho was my partner at the time, and he is still there, and he does a fantastic job with fitting. He uses the same philosophy that we came up with together over the years. I've had the opportunity to work with some really exceptional teaching pros. Adam Porzak. The cool thing about Adam, I actually taught Adam in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade how to do math. And more importantly for him, I taught him how to throw a spiral with a football. So, but he has worked with tour players and Division I players and Walker Cup players. He's worked with players, again, all kinds of caliber players. And that's part of the fun. But I also have worked with Joe Average, and I really enjoyed that the most. I would work with golfers, and they would come into the shop all excited, and they would show me their last 6 scorecards, and they broke their personal best all 6 times by up to 10 strokes. That was exciting for me. I loved that. But probably my favorite of all of the fittings, I had a 93-year-old man. The San Diego Union had done a story about our golf shop. And in the story, it said something about working with golfers and how we would help get golfers better results. And this 93-year-old man came into the shop and he said, I need 7 more yards. I just that's a kind of an odd number to need 7 more yards. And he went to explain there was a par 3 golf course in the little community that he lived in, and there was one hole he could not get to the green. And it had a false front, and the ball would end up rolling down in front of the green. And it was really challenging for him to walk down there to get the ball. So a lot of times if he was playing by himself, he left the ball there. And I just need 7 more yards. I would hit the green then. And we got, he took a couple of swings. I watched him. I'm looking at TrackMan results and a couple more swings, and he'd have to sit down and rest for a few minutes. And finally, the third time he got up, I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I changed a couple of things. And his first swing, he got 9 more yards. And I thought he was going to hug me. The next day he was out golfing and I get a phone call, and this was the whole message. I hit the green. That made my week. And I didn't even have to find out who left the message. It was on our answering machine back in the day when you had one of those. I hit the green, and I knew it was him. That was exciting. Josh, he's another reason why we're doing this. And I'm going to let Josh explain a little bit about him and his reason for getting involved.
Thank you, Gene. Yeah, very interesting background for you. You got a lot of experience in the industry. That's very cool. Very knowledgeable in this caliber of golf club fitting. My background, I'm a golfer in Arizona. I've been playing golf for about 5-6 years, competitively for 4 years. And I just want to get better at golf, obviously, as everybody else. But I also just want to learn about club technology itself. There's so many different aspects in club technology that an average golfer or even an avid golfer such as myself doesn't know about. And I think there's kind of a realm of information that every golfer is lacking in that. And we could obviously learn more about that. And I think this podcast is a good middle ground for someone such as yourself, Gene, who has a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge on this topic and plays a lot of golf, and someone like me who also plays a lot of golf but doesn't have that experience or knowledge in club technology and club fitting. So hopefully I could kind of bridge that gap between the audience and people such as yourself who actually, are a professional and an expert in this club fitting.
Yeah, it'll be fun to hear the questions you come up with. Because I was always in a fitting, I would do 3, 4, sometimes 5 fittings in a day, and everybody had questions. And some of the questions were the same old question week after week after week after week. And other questions, every once in a while, somebody would go, ask something, I go, that's an interesting question. Let's talk about it. So now for you, the listener, or if you happen to be viewing us, we're working on a way to include you in this, where you'll be able to ask questions, where you'll be able to have us do some analysis so we can help you. So that's something to stay tuned for. And it'll be exciting. One of the things that I learned real early on in club fitting, it matters. And I'm going to kind of go through my story, because my story is a little different how I got there. I'm trained as a teacher. I've taught for 37 years, taught math, and at a Lutheran school, and worked with junior hires. But I also sat there thinking, I love golf, and I got to find something I can do in golf. And one day it dawned on me, the golf club is simply the answer to a physics problem. And the physics problem is how do I make the ball go straight or longer, further, higher, all those kinds of things. And what is it that the golfer brings to the table, and how does that matter? And so I kind of went on a quest to figure that out many, many years ago. So a little bit about my background in golf. There used to be an organization called the GCA, the Golf Club Fitters Association, or Golf Club Makers, I guess it would have been called at that time. And I won a few worldwide top 10 awards from them. I was Western United States Club Fitter of the Year. I was California Clubmaker of the Year a number of times. And so I had that background. I mentioned I worked at ADS Golf and was co-owner there and did all the custom fitting. I had my assistant helping me, along with Scott, helping me building clubs. But it all started back a long time ago. Some of you weren't born then, when we used to use wooden woods. I'm sure, Josh, you have probably sets of wooden woods at home. But I was playing, 1974, I bought myself a set of Hague Ultra irons and woods and a golf bag, and it came to, with tax, $295. I remember that because I had to pay for that. And that was a huge investment, and now you can almost buy a driver shaft for that.
Right.
And my favorite club was a 4-wood. And one day I was playing, there's a local golf course, municipal golf course in the city I grew up in, back in Livonia, Michigan. And the first hole was a par 5. And if I hit my drive well, I usually had around 225 to 230 to get to the green. And if the wind was just right, that was my 4-wood. And I hit the flagstick one day with it for my closest chance at an albatross. But that was my absolute favorite club. It was my go-to club. If I was in trouble, I'd pull out a 4-wood. If I had a difficult lot, pull out my 4. I could hit that anywhere and hit any shot with it. And one day, I was on the first hole at Whispering Willows, and I hit that 4-wood, and I watched, and about 1,000 pieces of golf club went flying into the air. And the ball didn't go very far. And the head exploded. Oh no, that was my favorite club. So I went to a place that you all have heard about, but I won't name their name. Happened to be in existence back in that day in Detroit. And I went in and I said, my 4-wood blew up. I need a new 4-wood. And they would make 4-woods at that time, wooden heads. They had all kinds of 4-woods, and they gave me a 4-wood, put it on my shaft. And I went out the door expecting to hit that just as well. And the first time I hit the best hook I've ever hit in my life. Probably missed the green 40, 50 yards left. That was probably one of the better swings I ever made with that club. There were times I couldn't keep that golf club on, or the golf ball on the planet when I would hit that 4-wood. It didn't matter what I did. And I couldn't figure out why. I could hit another 4-wood. And the thing with my set is my 5-wood was a little bit of a fade. My 3-wood was a bigger fade. And my driver was even a bigger fade. And I had no idea why, but that was what I was dealing with. So went out, bought a new driver when I was in college because, okay, it must be, I need a new driver. And the guy fit me, and I was not the longest hitter in the world. I was, with a wooden driver, I could hit it maybe 235, 240. And he fit me into a Dynamic Gold S5 or 400 shaft stiff, and gave me a driver that was 1.5 degrees open. I learned that later. And I could really slice that well. I was all over the golf course. And again, I was like, I could hit a 2-wood straight as an arrow, but I couldn't figure out why can't I hit a driver. Didn't know the why. I went through college like that. I would struggle sometimes. I was always a good putter, and that was the thing that saved me. And my chipping was good. And so I could get around the golf course as long as I didn't have to go left with a driver. If I had to go left, I was in trouble. Got married, had my son. We're living in Southern California, and a friend came up to me and he goes, "Oh, you're a poor Lutheran school teacher. You'll never be able to afford new clubs. Here's some new clubs that I've had for the last 7 years, and I'm going to give them to you." Oh, well, that's wonderful. And we were going to be playing in a big church golf tournament that day. And he said, "Why don't you use them today?" Okay, I'll try them. Well, I shot 3 under. I never hit irons better before in my life. I hit the driver down the middle. I hit fairway woods down the middle. I was in love. They were Ram, and I don't even remember what the name of what Ram was the maker, but I don't remember the brand or model number. And 2 weeks later, guess what happened? They were stolen out of my car. I had no idea what they were. I'd never hit irons before as well. I'd never hit a driver before as well, and now they're gone. Well, in our area, there was a custom fitting golf shop, and it was like a quarter of a mile from my house. And the insurance company said, you got this much money to work with, so I went over there to the Custom Clubmaker. And everybody, he was the talk of the town. All the golfers went to see him. And so I went in and I was excited. This is going to be great. I've heard about this idea of custom clubs, but what is it? So I went into the shop and he took me out back, and we're standing in front of Palomar Hospital, and he has this little device and he sticks it on the ground, and he has me standing on the sidewalk, and he says, swing. And I did one time. He goes, okay, we're done. I was like, that is amazing. This is the most brilliant man I've ever met. He has figured everything out in one swing. And so I left, and I'm all excited. I'm going to have these new custom clubs, and this life is going to be wonderful. And I remember going back in, and there was a guy, and I was probably 30, 35 at the time. And there was a guy who was probably about 70, almost as old as I am. And he was getting custom fit. And I was like, well, I'm watching this because maybe I missed something that he did that I didn't know about while I took my one swing. So I'm watching, and he took one swing and he was done. I was like, that's interesting. He really looked kind of old, and his club head speed was pretty slow. And he comes into the store, and he ended up needing the exact same stuff I did. I was like, that is amazing. How do our two swings that have nothing in common need the exact same stuff? So I already had a little kind of inkling that maybe I'm not going to be really super happy with this. But I got my clubs. He gave me a bag to carry him home in since my bag was stolen. And I went out to the golf course and I played with them. And I never hit a 4-iron better, never hit an 8 and 9 iron worse. That makes no sense. How can you not hit an 8 and a 9 iron? But you can hit a 4-iron. I could hit some of the fairway woods, but I couldn't hit. I had a 1, 3, and a 5. I could hit the 5. I couldn't hit the 3. And the driver was And this was back in the day when a driver head was maybe 200 cubic centimeters. So they were pretty small. Well, I was perplexed. And I got a book in the mail one day, or a magazine in the mail, and it was talking about clubs and how to make golf clubs. Well, when I start up a power tool, my wife comes running, can we afford to get this fixed? Whatever you're working on. And so I read about this. I thought, what the heck? I'll never be able to afford a graphite shafted driver. I'm a Lutheran school teacher. I'm going to order this book, and maybe I can figure out how to build it. So I read it like cover to cover 20, 30 times. It was a whole 40 or 50 pages. And I finally got up the nerve to buy some components. And I put it together, and I went out to our school. We had a field that was like 130, 20 yards long. And I went out at one end and swung the club as hard as I could to see if the head would fly off. Because I didn't want it to fly off at the golf course, because I don't know what I was doing. And it stayed on. So I was pretty excited. So went out to the golf course and started playing around with it. And I hit it really well. And I was like, I wonder what I just made. I have no idea. I just stuck the skinny end in the head, and I put a hunk of rubber on the other end, and that's called a grip. And I got it cut, and voila, I have a golf club. Well, for Christmas that year, my wife said, why don't you go to Austin, Texas? Because I had ordered this stuff through Golfsmith, and they had a school that was going on the week before Christmas, and we had an early Christmas break that year. And so I said, really? She said, yeah, go ahead. So I drove to Austin, Texas, got there in the morning, got to, hang out from 5:30 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, as long as I brought in food for the guys who were working. And I would go to class from 9 till 5. And the first thing I did is when I started learning about things like swing weight and all that kind of stuff, I got my 8 and 9 iron and I put them on the swing weight scale. And they came out to be like C6. Well, that doesn't mean much to most people, but now that I know what that means, that's really headlight. That's like a ladies' club. Then my 4-iron was D4. I wonder if I somehow made the other clubs heavier, if they would work better. And magically they did. Well, I started building clubs for friends because they were all too cheap like me to be able to afford clubs. So I would just put things together, and I'd watch them swing, and I'd kind of think, well, maybe this will work for you. And I don't know why. I just picked stuff, and everybody was, oh, this is really good. Well, then I started building more clubs, and I would go to the driving range, and I'd carry like 30 clubs in my bag when I'd play golf. That's why my right shoulder seems like it droops down a little bit because of carrying all those extra clubs. And I would find people like you, Josh, out on the golf course. And I'd say, could you do me a favor? Hit this and tell me what you think. And most people would say, oh, okay. And I would just record in my mind, and then later I'd write it down, what they told me, what their feedback was. And I would just see all kinds of different swings, all kinds of different speeds, give them all kinds of different clubs. Go to the driving range. I would go up and down the stalls, handing clubs to people. Give me your feedback. And I started kind of categorizing all this information and trying to figure out, why does this guy like this club, but this guy doesn't? And their swings are pretty similar, but the results are totally different. So I started trying to figure it out. What's happening? Because this is way before, like I had a mat at my house. I had an outdoor hitting net, and I had a measure off, and it had little lines. So I knew, like, if you launched it at 8 degrees, it'd hit the mat here. And if I launched at 10 degrees, it'd hit the mat there. And that was how you figured out how high somebody was hitting the ball. And you had to have really good eyes to see it hit the mat. And did that, ended up, started, from that point on, I said, I got to find out more about this. So I went to another golfsmith school. They had an accreditation test at that time, and I think it was like 400 questions. You had a month to answer all the questions. I went through the test, and you could use books, any materials that you could find. This is all like pre-internet days. This is like probably 1994, 95, so there's not a whole lot of internet help out there. I send the test back in, and I happened to be going back to Golfsmith for another school, and I got there, and the guy said, Gene, come here. He goes, you had the highest test score ever. And I had written a 20-page addendum why I thought like 20 of the questions shouldn't even be on the test. And he said, and we agreed with all of what you came up with. He said, you had the best score that we've ever had. Now, I don't know if he was just saying that because he was trying to make me feel good, but later on in life, when they wrote there was a new accreditation test, I was one of the beta testers and going through the test and trying to help them come up with some better questions. And I got to do that at the Golf Academy of America. So started off, had my own little shop, 700 square feet, open like from 4 o'clock in the afternoon when I got done with school until nobody was coming, or I was done with work, which sometimes meant 2, 3 in the morning. Opened up, then partnered with a guy, and that became ADS Golf. And we had like 2,700 square foot warehouse with 2 putting greens. We had 550 shafts on the wall. We had probably 50 or 60 club heads outfitted so that we could connect them into those different shafts. We had TrackMan that we could use. And so kind of my career, the early part was setting the stage, trying to figure it out. What matters? And by the end, once I got into ADS Golf, and that was about 2002, pretty much had figured out what things mattered. So that's kind of my nutshell story.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's great. And just to piggyback off of, how you met me, we played golf numerous times at a golf course in Arizona, Las Colinas Golf Club. And, I was hitting every other iron good, but my 6-iron. And there's a story about my 6-iron that I'm going to get into right now that Gene had no idea about when we were playing. But the shaft in my 6-iron was a 7-iron length because, when COVID was going on and whatnot, there was all that supply shortage and all this other, stuff going around. And I broke my 6-iron shaft. So when I went to order a new shaft for my 6-iron, they didn't have it in a 6-iron length. And of course, me playing tournament golf, I had a tournament the next week. So I was, on a time crunch. I was like, okay, I'll just put a 7-iron shaft in there and call it a day, not knowing what that entails. So, I didn't think it would be that much of a difference. It'd just be, it's a shorter club, it's going to be the same length as my 7-iron, so be it. What's an inch going to do to my game, So I would say probably our second or third round playing together, Gene, on a few, because a lot of the par threes there are the same, yardage. So I'm hitting the same club on all these par threes, and we started to notice a pattern. All of my other irons were a slight fade, and my 6-iron was a straight hook. And I remember getting frustrated and saying, well, why the heck can I not hit this straight? So, we kind of dissected it a little bit, and that was kind of when I was getting into your background as a club fitter, and you took a look at it, and you kind of gave me this insight and told me about swing weight and MOI, which was, we fixed that issue by putting lead tape onto my club. And just so you could give the audience a better understanding of what does that do? So I had this shaft that was too small for a 6-iron. It was a 7-iron length, and I was hooking the ball a lot. And you described it a certain way, and now I want you to describe that again for the people at home listening.
So when you put a shorter shaft in, you lose swing weight, which is simply head feel. Mm-hmm. And because you make a pretty aggressive move at the ball, you had no idea where that club head was as you came into the ball. You could see that. You'd kind of feel, and you'd flip at it trying to pick up, well, where is it? Where is it? And so we added probably about 5-6 inches of lead tape. And I remember the very first time you hit it, you kind of looked at me like, oh my goodness, it went straight. This is wonderful.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it was just so, I couldn't believe it because, like I said, I mean, every time I hit that club, it was just a straight hook. And I thought it was, a mental thing. I hit a bad shot once with it, and, you kind of get anxious over the ball and you get the yips almost. So I really thought it was a mental thing. And then once you added that lead tape, and quite literally the first shot I hit went dead straight. Yep. And it was just, I couldn't believe it. It was mind blowing.
Yep. I remember looking at you and you just looking at me and looking at the club and looking at me, look at the club. What did you do?
Yeah, no,
How did that happen?
It's magic. No, it quite literally is magic. Yep. And there is a science to it. And, that's kind of what led us here now is, going in depth and learning more about what the little things in our club mean. Like you look at TrackMan and all the numbers that you could see nowadays. What do those numbers mean? You have somebody like me who has an understanding of what those numbers mean, but what can we do to help those numbers other than, fixing your swing? Like you said, you put it best when you said this, it's not if you have a good swing, it's if you have a repeatable swing or repeatable parts in your swing in which you could kind of build off that. And like, that's how club fitting is. You could fit the people on their swing. And that's the name of the game now. I mean, you look at everybody on tour, not everybody has the same swing. Like Matthew Wolff, for example. Right. I mean, obviously there is some positions that are better than most people. But it's consistent. And if you could do something on a consistent basis, I think that changes people's game for the long run.
And the amazing thing is I would say probably out of the, TrackMan fittings, probably did 3,000 fittings using TrackMan. Everybody is consistent. Now, are they as consistent as a touring pro? No, but everybody makes the same move over and over. The question is does the weapons you're using help you to hit the ball? I used to have people come in all the time. It's the Indian, not the arrow. And I would say, look at them. I go, you know what you call a Native American if you give them bad arrows in 3 weeks? A vegan.
Oh, well, there you go.
It's yes, the golfer obviously plays a role, but if the clubs don't match them, golfers are notorious for blaming themselves. And I would use this kind of story like, if you went in and bought a size 4 shoe, even though you wear an 11, but they were on sale, because that's what golfers do. They buy things on sale. And you said, okay, I'm going to put a lot of Vaseline on my feet so I can stick my feet into these shoes, and then I'm going to go for a 5-mile hike. Now, when you finally rip those shoes off of your feet are going to be a bloody mess. The average golfer yells at his feet.
Right.
For not fitting the shoes properly.
Sure.
And I can hit a golf ball, and you can hit a golf ball with anybody's clubs. But can we repeat with them? No, we can't. Not unless they're what we need. And that's the key to fitting, is figuring all that out. And that's what we're going to talk about. Next time we're going to talk about philosophies. What is the club fitter's philosophy, and does that fit your philosophy? Because if it doesn't, run away. Because you're not getting fit for you. You're getting fit for him. We're going to talk about lengths and I would have so many people come in and I would why are your clubs this length? Well, because of X, Y, and Z. No, that's not a reason. And I would see all kinds of things, I would have, we'll talk about swing weight and moment of inertia and where does the weight balance point of the club need to be? Sometimes it's in the head, sometimes it's in the grip, and sometimes it's kind of neutral. Everybody is different. And that's, goes back to what you were saying. There aren't 2 tour players that swing exactly the same. They have to get into similar positions, but how they get there, John Rahm and Freddie Couples, there's nothing in common other than they both hit the ball pretty well. Exactly. And Freddie can't use John's clubs, and John definitely can't use Freddie's. It's just, that's golf.
100%.
And that's what we're going to explore.
I'm very excited. Yeah, I hope people are just as excited as we are for this podcast. I mean, we have so many great things in store for you guys, so many great topics. And, once again, just your experience in this industry, my experience as a golfer, competitive golfer, there's so many things that we could learn and use to our advantage. I mean, people don't realize how much we could use club fitting to our advantage. And, people nowadays are, there's Golf Galaxy and, all these other places that you could get fitted at. And people are starting to learn that, you could swing your swing and get pretty far by swinging your swing. Now, how you swing your swing with your clubs, that's a different story. If you have a club that's fitted to you, the perfect example was the Freddie Couples and John Rahm. I mean, that's as good as you can get. John Rahm definitely cannot swing Freddie Couples clubs, and Freddie Couples can't swing John Rahm's. I mean, that's just well said. So I hope everybody learns just as much as I do. There is some topics that I have a general understanding about, but as far as some of the things that you talk about, Gene, I'm still learning, and hopefully by the end of this series, we could all call ourselves experts in this topic of club fitting. So I'm very, very excited for that.
And the important thing for our listeners to understand, I had accreditation. I had all the levels of achievement, and I had the plaques to prove it. And I think I had one person who asked me about it out of probably 6,000 or 7,000 fittings that I did. And it was more like, what's that on the wall? Oh, that's my plaque that says I know something. You hear about master club fitter. There's nothing that means, it's a meaningless term. It simply means that they figured out which end gets the piece of metal, which end gets the hunk of rubber, and how to keep it together. That's a master club fitter. In the golf industry, you need to understand what's important for you. And we're going to talk about things like that. What do you need to know so that to make sure you're not going in? Because you mentioned Las Colinas. I go out there all the time. And there are so many times I get paired with people and they're telling me, yeah, I got fit and I'm 2 strokes worse than I was beforehand. I guess I'll have to kind of get used to it. I go, no, you shouldn't be getting used to them.
Right.
It should be it's an automatic thing. The only thing you might have to get used to if you go to a different textured golf grip.
Yeah.
That might take a little bit getting used to, but the rest of it is, no, your swing works better with this. And here's the proof. And, out of all the fittings, I don't ever remember a person coming back saying, we need to do something different. There were a couple of builds that I messed up on, put in a 6-iron shaft and a 9-iron because I read the number backwards and didn't line them up. Didn't look down at the numbers, and I apologized profusely, and I was so embarrassed. But overall, if the fitting is done well, the results are immediate and they're long lasting. They don't change. Nobody, with the exception of kids. Kids will grow stronger and everything else. Those things will change.
Sure.
But the average golfer, it might be over a 10-year period. You either get a little bit older or, you might have a couple of injuries so that you can't do certain things anymore. But in general, I play with the same basic things that I needed 10 years ago. And, if my knee wasn't bothering me, I can go out and play fairly well.
Yeah, and it's funny, I'll tell you, I still have that lead tape on my 6-iron, and it is still it's now a confident club for me off a tee box. And, if I'm playing a course where driver isn't necessarily a play and I need to hit an iron off the tee, I either go to my 4 or my 6-iron. I mean, those are my 2 go-to long irons off the tee for a par 4 if I'm, laying up. And it really is mind-boggling how I was so anxious over that club, and all it took was just a little bit more weight. And lead tape is an amazing tool for players to experiment with. Lead tape is so versatile. You could put it on literally anything and just play with it. There's no wrong use of lead tape, unless
you don't
obviously
want to put
you
it on
put
the
whole
face.
No, right. Unless you put the whole roll on the face, then no, that's not really a good use for it. But no, I want to put some on my putter just to add some more weight on my putter, and experiment and tool with that. And that's the beauty of club fitting. There's so many things you could tool with and work with and see what best fits you. Like you said, you had a workshop with hundreds of shafts on the wall. Shafts are incredibly difficult to get fit to. I mean, incredibly difficult. And I know for me,
but I'm going to teach you the secret.
Yeah. And that's hopefully what everybody's going to get from this is the secret to finding what shaft is best for you, and have to, I guess, eliminate that. Oh, well, it took me forever to get this shaft. It's a confidence booster. I know which shaft I am. I know which shaft I'm going to play. This is the one. And another thing too, a club pro that, I know very well, he's Callaway sponsored, and, he was with Ping before, and he was talking to me how he doesn't like his Callaway irons because they're not the same specs.
Yep.
as his ping. And I go, well, how long have you had those pings? He said, ever since I turned pro. And he said, and even before I turned pro, the clubs that I had when I was a junior and college golfer were the same specs as well. He said, not very much has changed with my club specs, but the heads have, And he says, I would use those clubs if they were the same. He said, if I hit those the exact same as I did my pings, I would play them. In which he did get refitted and got his specs back to what they were. And, it's like Tiger Woods, for example. Everybody looks at the clubs on the rack, like the P7 TWs. They think those are the exact same clubs that Tiger is hitting. Not at all.
No, you couldn't get Tiger's clubs off the ground.
No, not nearly as close. And that's kind of a misconception when people look at golf clubs off the rack. It's a marketing scheme. They go, oh, well, this is the club that Rory uses. Okay.
Exactly.
Yes, to an extent.
It fell out of his
not
bag.
Really. Right. Yeah. So, Tiger has been hitting the same specs on his irons since probably his 20s.
Yep.
Maybe earlier than that.
Real quick story. I got to be able to call Lee Elder a close friend over the years before he passed away. And Lee was still playing similar specs to what he played in 1970.
Right.
And he was 80 at that time. I think he was 81 years old. And I kept, Mr. Elder, those are a little too stiff for you. Yeah, but I like the way they feel. Okay.
Right.
You won way more money and you've won more tournaments than I'll ever do. So you're good.
And that just goes back to your point, very little things change over time. And unless you're going through some physical changes, and obviously if you had some physical impairments that I guess limited your mobility, obviously that would change. But me, for example, unless I have a complete rework on my swing, which I probably won't. I'm not saying my swing is the greatest, but, it's not to the point where I have to completely redo it. I've been playing golf for so long that I could kind of manage what I got. And, I could probably change my specs probably 2 or 3 times in the next 20 years. Maybe. And that's a big if. That's if something happens down the road, or like I said, a physical impairment.
Yep.
But for the most part, it stays pretty stagnant.
Well, it's going to be a fun journey.
I'm excited,
and
Jim.
we'll do number 2 in a couple of weeks and get that out. And we look forward to hearing from our audience when we figure out how they're going to hear from us and how we can hear from them. So take care.
Thank you.